And we are live, everyone. Okay, so once again, thank you to everyone for joining me today. Okay, this is the fifth conference I believe I have organized now. Today's topic is one of my most commonly asked questions from students I've had over the past 8 years or so is phrasal verbs. Okay, how do they work? Why do we have so many? Why do we use them? Why do we love them so much in English? Okay, so phrasal verbs, there are hundreds, if not thousands of them in English. It's going to be impossible to teach every single one today. But the objective for today is for you all to feel more comfortable using them in your conversations and in your lessons with your other teachers. Okay. So today's agenda, I'm going to basically define what phrasal verbs are, give you an explanation as to, their purpose, how they work. We'll also talk about the different types of phrasal verbs that we have in English as well. We'll share with you some typical mistakes that I see quite often and some useful strategies to try and avoid those mistakes in future. And we'll also go over some vocabulary. I'll teach you some very useful phrasal verbs as well. Okay. Now, this conference today is suitable for B1 level. If I could get everyone just to confirm what their level is in the chat box, just, put B1, B2, A2, whatever it is. If you could type it in the chat box, and if I need to adapt some of the language as we go, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, everyone. I can see some things here. Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay. I should also mention as well, if you have any questions, if something is not clear, please let me know. Just type your question or your query in the chat box, and at the end of the conference, I will address your questions. Okay. So, phrasal verbs. Let's begin, shall we? Definition and explanation. So, as I'm sure most of you know, a phrasal verb is basically a verb that is combined with one or two particles, okay? Typically a preposition, an adverb, or both. Now, what happens with phrasal verbs, this combination, it creates a meaning different from the original verb, okay? This is not typically something you see in Latin languages like French. Okay, this is quite a unique English thing that we have. Okay, I say this to many students. My best advice is to try and think of these 2 or 3 words like they are one word almost, rather than, what does this verb mean? What does this preposition mean? Will this give me a clue what the phrasal verb means? Unfortunately, it doesn't always work like that. All right, so I would recommend, if you can, think of the phrasal verbs as one entity, one word. All right. So, why are they so important? We use them in everyday English. It's as simple as that. With their friends, with their family, when we travel. We use them all the time. They are essential for understanding and participating in natural conversations. Now, the main components of each, okay, so we have the main verb, which is the simple action word, and we also have the particle as well, so the preposition or adverb that changes the meaning of the main verb. For example, getting over prejudice at work is never easy. Getting over is kind of like to overcome, in English one could say. I asked around, but nobody has seen my wallet. Meaning I asked many people around me, literally, if anybody has seen my wallet. Somebody broke in last night and stole our stereo. So this is when someone comes into your house or your apartment and they are not invited, like a thief, for example. Okay. So we've looked at get over, ask around, break in, broke in here. Now, there are a few types of phrasal verbs in English. Okay. Now, sometimes when you learn phrasal verbs at school, this is not taught. Okay, this particular area of phrasal verbs is not taught. And I think it's very important that everyone knows the difference between the different kinds of phrasal verbs that we have. The first one being intransitive phrasal verbs. These here, they basically don't need an object. Okay, they can stand alone in a sentence without an object. To wake up, to stop sleeping. Okay, I usually wake up at 7 a.m. Now, you don't need an object here, but you can tell someone to wake up. Okay, I don't know if any of you have children, you have to get them ready for school. Wake up now. To come over, to visit someone at their place. Why don't you come over after work? To run out, to have no more of something. We've run out of milk, meaning we had milk, but now we don't. Okay? These are intransitive phrasal verbs. Okay? Now, we've looked at intransitive. Now we have transitive phrasal verbs. Okay? There are two kinds of these rather. Now, a transitive phrasal verb, they use a direct object and they can either be separable or inseparable. What do I mean by that? So, separable transitive phrasal verbs, this is when the verb and the particle, as the name suggests, can be separated and the object of the verb can be placed either between the verb and the particle or after. For example, turn off, to stop a machine or device. Can you turn the music off? Or, can you turn off the music? No change of meaning here. Slight change of structure, but the meaning is the same. So these are what we call separable transitive phrasal verbs. Another example here could be to pick up. This is a very common one. To collect or to gather. Can you pick your toys up? Or can you pick up your toys? This is one for any of the parents out there with young children. All right. Now, with inseparable transitive phrasal verbs, the verb and the particle must stay together. And the object comes after the particle. You cannot separate the two parts, as the name suggests. It's inseparable. For example, to look after, meaning to care for or watch over. She looks after her younger brother. Bear in mind, you cannot say she looks her younger brother after. It doesn't make sense. Okay? Simply, she looks after her younger brother. Another example could be run into. Again, another very common one. To unexpectedly meet someone in the street, at the store, at the bar, at the restaurant. Using it in the past tense. I ran into an old friend at the store. Once again, you cannot say, I ran an old friend into at the store. Doesn't work, okay? So separable and inseparable. The last one we're going to take a look at here are the three-part phrasal verbs. This happens when you have one verb, a particle, and another particle. They have three parts and they are inseparable. Some of these ones I imagine you've seen before, particularly look forward to. Very common one, especially in professional emails. We'll take a look at the first one though, to come up with, or come up with. To think of or devise, especially spontaneously or quickly. She came up with a brilliant idea for the project. Okay. Look forward to. One that's used a lot in English. I'm sure you've all seen this one. Look forward to anticipate something with pleasure. I look forward to meeting you. To drop out of. To leave or exit something before finishing. Typically school, college, university, any form of education, possibly even the military as well, the army. Chloe dropped out of art school after the first term. Okay. So far so good. Thumbs up, you still with me? Clear? Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you so much. So, what we're going to take a look at now are some very common mistakes and some useful strategies to help you avoid these mistakes. Literal interpretation. Okay? This is wrong for so many reasons. Occasionally it might be okay, but do not rely on this. As I said at the beginning of the conference, what happens when we have the verb and the preposition or the adverb, sometimes the meaning is completely random. This happens more often than one would think. So, it's very important to avoid the literal translation or the literal interpretation here, okay? So interpreting the meaning of a phrasal verb based on the individual words, please avoid. An example could be put out, might be wrongly interpreted as placing something outside, when it can mean to extinguish, as in put out a fire. Put out a cigarette as well could also apply here. Little strategy one could take. Understand that phrasal verbs often have idiomatic meanings. When I say idiomatic, I'm thinking of things like, a piece of cake. meaning it's very easy, right? Or it's raining cats and dogs, meaning it's raining a lot. Phrasal verbs kind of follow this similar logic in this sense. My best advice, memory game. Just try your best to remember them as best as you can. And by doing that, you can take the verb and the preposition and try and think of them as one entity rather than, simply the verb and the preposition as separate things. Okay. Now, as I say, phrasal verbs, if you watch series, English or American series, in the everyday conversations you hear, you're going to hear them a lot. We use them all the time. Okay. Incorrect particle. Now, with the verb get, there are over 100 different combinations you could have with get and different prepositions, and the meanings could also change as well. So making sure that you have the correct particle is essential. If you do not have the correct particle, it can change the meaning of the sentence entirely. For example, saying run up to instead of run into. Bearing in mind, run into, to unexpectedly meet someone. Okay. Strategy. Practice, repetition, and exposure. One thing that helps me a lot is using flashcards, okay? You can do this in multiple ways. This could be using a small notebook or just having small pieces of card and writing phrasal verbs with a synonym or even a translation next to them as well. Everybody learns different, I guess, but I find this way particularly useful, especially with this here. It is a memory game, after all. There are numerous apps and online platforms designed to help learners practice these phrasal verbs as well. We have some videos on our YouTube channel, but we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Okay. Another common mistake, misplacement of objects with separable phrasal verbs. This is probably one of the more common mistakes that I see. Placing the object in the wrong position, especially when the object is a pronoun. Pick up it rather than pick it up. Classic example here. Now, a good way to try and remember this is, or a good strategy to have, is to basically remember that if the object is a pronoun, it must always come between the verb and the particle. Okay? So besides passive consumption, like reading or listening, engage in activities like speaking or writing that will force you to actively use these phrasal verbs. Okay, so far so good, everyone? Clear? Seeing some thumbs up, wonderful. Good, thank you, thank you. Now what I'm going to share with you is a selection of useful phrasal verbs for advanced learners in 3 real-life situations. As I mentioned at the beginning of the conference, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of phrasal verbs in English. I'm not expecting everyone to know every single one. Most native speakers don't actually know every single one either, but I am going to share with you some very useful ones today. Now, I've included some situations here in regards to arrangements, and perhaps some professional situations here. On the left, the situation of cancellation, if you're cancelling something. The most common phrasal verb that we have for this would be to call off, which literally means to cancel. They had to call off the event due to bad weather. In other words, they had to cancel the event due to bad weather. The meaning is the exact same. Number 2, to turn down, to refuse or decline something. She turned down the job offer in Los Angeles. She refused the job offer in Los Angeles. She declined the job offer. The same meaning here. Opt out, to choose not to participate. You can opt out of the email list at any time. So that's call off, turn down, opt out in situations involving cancelling something. In regards to decision making, to weigh up, which literally means to consider. You need to weigh up the pros and cons before making a decision. To factor in, to include a particular amount or detail when you plan something. You can see in the example here, you need to factor in travel time when planning your trip. To size up, to evaluate or assess. She quickly sized up the situation and acted. One could also say she evaluated the situation. She evaluated the situation and acted. And over here, negotiation. To hammer out, to work hard to reach an agreement or solution. The two companies hammered out a deal after months of negotiation. To nail down. I like this phrasal verb personally. To nail down, to finalize or secure something. We need to nail down the date for the next meeting. To haggle over, to negotiate or argue over a condition. Haggle is a great word. It's very common in British English as well. We use this a lot. So the customer and the vendor spent minutes haggling over the price of the souvenir. Okay. So that's 9 phrasal verbs here. So we have call off, turn down, opt out, weigh up, factor in, size up, hammer out, nail down, and haggle over. So, to give you some additional resources as well, we have some e-learning modules available on the e-learning platform. They are available for B1 and B2 level. We've also published an article as well, 2 articles, pardon. They are available on the Le Cercle de Langues blog. So there's a link just in here. I'll make sure you can get these links as well. Sorry, I have to apologize about the noise of the police or the ambulance. I live in a very busy street, so I'm not sure if you can hear them. But apologies for the noise there. And yeah, the last one here, the Cercle de Langues YouTube video as well. So I'm talking about phrasal verbs around the world as well. that everybody knows as well. Okay. So we have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to take any questions and any comments you have just now about phrasal verbs. Let me just check the chat here. Okay, so to haggle over rupture conventionnelle, private question. What exactly do you mean, Erica? You can switch your mic on.
Regarding what we spoke about previously, you and I, can you say that you negotiate rupture conventionnelle, because you know what it is now?
Yeah.
I say in this context that I haggle over or not?
Not necessarily. I get what you mean. Exactly. So just to give everyone some context, Erica is one of my regular students. We had a conversation earlier where this came up. But just to be clear, haggle over involves any form of negotiation, whether it be at a market or in a business situation, or if you're traveling in a country where, you know, haggling at the market is common practice. No one pays the asking price, so to speak. Okay, this is what haggle over is particularly for. All right. I see a question here from Isabel. How do we learn them easily? It's a very good question. So, my advice here, everybody learns differently. We all have things that work for us, things that don't work for us. With phrasal verbs, honestly speaking, it is a memory game. We don't have a particular rule for them other than the structure, the verb, preposition, and adverb, or adverb, I should say. My advice would honestly be to think of the verb and the preposition as one unit or one word, rather than treating them as two. This is a very English thing that we have. It doesn't really exist in Latin languages. So I understand for French speakers, it can be quite complicated. But if you really think of the verb and the preposition, the phrasal verb, you know, the 2 words or 3 words as one unit, this should help. In terms of study methods, one could use flashcards, as I say, have a notebook with, you know, a synonym next to it, like call off, cancel, or annuler, if you prefer. Something like that. The other thing to bear in mind as well with phrasal verbs, we use them in everyday conversation among our friends, family, when we travel, etc. But in the workplace, in very professional situations, especially if we don't know the person, we don't use them that regularly. It's mostly in casual, everyday conversation. Okay. So,
thank you.
You're very welcome, Isabel. You're very welcome. Well, everybody, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today. That is our time. I hope you all found the conference useful. I hope you all learned something. I will be doing a conference next week as well. It will be on faux amis, false friends in French and English. Okay, same time, same place. So hopefully I'll see some of you there. That conference, I should mention, is suitable for A1 and A2 level and above. Okay. So everyone, have a great evening, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.